Okay, now what we're going to do is talk a little bit about the principles of effective technology integration. So this is kind of really an important thing. There are 4 principles, and if you go to your to the principles of effective technology integration page, you'll see that you're going to be viewing some videos. You're going to be looking at some PowerPoint presentations. They'll kind of help you to understand the 4 principles and what they are. Just to summarize basically what those principles are. The first principle is that is technology typically involving the student? And so is it student-centered? And so basically you're asking yourself questions like, who's using the technology first? And does it promote active learning? If it does, and it is centered on the student, and the student's using it, then that's typically a good principle. You want to involve the student as much as possible when you're using technology. Let them use it. That's not always possible with some of the students that we teach, just because they have certain limitations that don't allow them necessarily to use the technology. But when possible, that's what we should do. The second principle is it integral? Integral means basically it's essential to the learning activity. It's not something that exists outside of the learning activity. It's actually part of it. It's essential to that learning activity. The third principle of effective technology integration is, does it focus on the learning task and not focusing on the technology itself? You don't really ever want to use technologies for technology's sake. You always want to make sure that the technology is actually kind of second to the learning activity. The learning task is the most important thing, and that technology should facilitate the student being able to learn that task. And then, of course, the last one is, does it facilitate the learning activity? And would that learning activity be more difficult, if not impossible, without the technology? So, you know, there are some things you could probably use. You know, there's other technologies you could possibly use, and not necessarily maybe the one that you've chosen. However, if this certain technology makes the task much easier and far more possible for the student to accomplish it, then yes, it's a good technology integration. So you want to keep those things in mind. So those are the 4 principles, basically student-centered, integral, focused on the learning task and not on the technology, and then fourth, it facilitates the possibility and the and makes the task less difficult for the student. So those are the 4. But anyway, you go through that assignment on your page, and it'll take you through those. And then what you're going to do is at the end, you're going to remember Josh's story that we introduced the first day of class. You're going to go out and relook at Josh's story, keeping in mind these 4 principles, okay? And so it's important as you're doing that activity that you're making notes written down of specific examples that you see the teacher using effective technology integration. Is she involving the student in the task? Is it essential to the learning task? Is it focused on the learning task and not just something that's, you know, it's not just focused on the technology, but the task itself? And would it be more difficult or almost impossible if the student didn't have the technology to be able to accomplish the task? So you're going to look at it in that light. Make sure you make very specific notes, because you're going to do a video a video reflection. That's your week 2 video reflection, where you're going to tell me 4 specific examples. And so I'm going to need you to be very specific, so I can, based on what you tell me, I can visualize in my mind where in the video you're talking about. So be very, very specific. And so that's basically the assignment for the principles of effective technology integration. And I'm going to take you through now a quick screencast to kind of show you how to get to those things if you need it. If you don't, then you can go ahead and move on. Okay, I'm on week 2 agenda, and you're seeing here the step 3 of your tasks for this week is to complete the principles of effective technology integration. So I'm going to click on that, and you'll see here it's a short activity, but basically you're going to learn more about it. You're going to view a PowerPoint presentation. If you just click on that link, it'll take you there. You're also going to view a short video by clicking on the link that's provided there. And after you view that PowerPoint and the video, you're going to view Josh's story, the story I first introduced you to, by clicking on the YouTube link here. And then as you view the video, you need to make sure you make very specific examples of each principle that the teacher's using the technology effectively. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go to your video 2, your video reflection for week 2, and you're going to post a video reflection. So I will just click briefly here on the short video that will introduce you a little bit. This is the video. If you click on the link, it looks like this. Okay, we won't go through that right now, but that'll help to introduce you a little bit. The PowerPoint presentation will also help you quite a bit. What you'll do is you're just going to open this in PowerPoint, or you can save it down onto your hard drive. If you click Save and click OK, and see if it will save it down on here. It should save it down on your, and it did right here. It went to downloads. You also could just save it right onto your desktop. But this is what this is what it's going to look like. These are the slides, and it'll just take you through, as you can see. Here's the first principle. It gives you some examples, so please look at those because that will help you a little bit. Principle 2 and 3 and 4, and then it'll give you some guidelines, and then there's some more specific examples here. Some of these examples are more geared towards elementary school, elementary education. So there are not a lot of examples here of actual special ed. However, let me go ahead and close out of the PowerPoint. However, you're going to go to a specific example where it's being used. If you remember Josh's story, you're going to go out to Josh's story, and you're going to go ahead and load that video, and then you're going to make very specific notes of examples. And I need you guys to be very specific so that by looking at your video reflection, I can tell where in the video you're talking about, okay? And then, of course, you'll go out. The last thing is to complete the video reflection. So if I click on video reflection in the sidebar, and then I just go down here, scroll down, you'll see week 2's assignment, which is after reviewing that, please talk about 4 specific examples from the video about how the principles, 4 principles of effective technology integration were used. And again, you need to be very, very specific so that I wouldn't have to look at the video to know exactly what you're talking about, okay? So that's that assignment.